a Motorsport Podcast Network production. Hey everyone, welcome along. It's Noons. It's great to have you with me as we go down the rabbit hole and talk about the career of Dean Canto with Dean Canto. Probably the best bloke to talk about Dean Canto, I would have thought. This is the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn, celebrating 40 years of delivering you top gear at low prices. Shop in store or online today at autobarn.com.au. Now, part one of the chat with Dino was really great. We covered off a whole pile of good stuff, and there's lots more left in part two. There's, well, where do we start? Why he ended up at Dick Johnson Racing and who the team signed him up to beat. That's a good story. How he arrived and departed Garry Rogers Motorsport, and let's just say the departure was a year earlier than he expected. A win that kind of wasn't a win in Western Australia. If you remember 2006, you'll know what I'm talking about. And the success and the heartbreak of Bathurst alongside David Reynolds and much, much more. Now, we love the love that we get from you, our Sleuth faithful, and we want to share more stuff with you because that's what we're like. We're sharing and caring. We want you to be a bigger part of our family via V8 Sleuth Podcast Plus. You can get ad-free episodes, bonus extra eps. Get on board now, v8sleuth.supportingcast.fm. The link's in the show notes with details on how you can join up and get those benefits. And with your support, we can keep making more podcasts, doing more chats, answering more questions in Q&A episodes, and a whole heap more, of course. We have great partners like Autobarn who get behind us, but we love when we've got the Sleuth faithful on board as well. So get on board. The link is in the show notes if you want to get involved. Love to have you on board. Now, Dean Canto was a really popular first guest in terms of the first episode that we've done. So part two, we're going to go into the next phase of his career. If you missed part one, go back and have a listen. It helps explain the pathway to where he gets to, where we're going to pick up this episode. So buckle up and enjoy part two of the V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn with Dean Canto. Briggs comes in, deal evaporates with you and he. There's no seat there with Roland and Triple Eight. They do keep you for the Enduros in 04 with Ivan Muller. So you're pretty experienced at co-driving with blokes who don't speak English as their first language. So you're building up a bit of a list of these blokes by that stage. But could you see, and I remember 04, I mean, Triple Eight, they had a lot of failures, a lot of parts breaking, and the engines were a drama. I think suspension was a drama. But could you see then where they were going and how they were going to get there, or do you think they got there a bit faster than maybe you thought they might? Because the next year they get Craig Lowndes and they start winning stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously their drive to win and their engineering background, I guess, is why the category is where it is now. Because had they not come along, it wouldn't have been pushed to the level it's at. So, yeah, they had their ideas, but all the components that they were trying to lightweight things and everything else, it might seem good on paper, but in the reality of the world of supercars, I remember being at Bathurst in 2004, and uprights were getting pulled off and taken to an engineer shop down the road, and they were trying to treat them, and it was a challenging year, but I guess you got to push the boundaries to improve. So. It was good and bad at the same time.
Yeah, they found the boundaries and then they found how to get the most out of them. So mate, for 2005, you end up, well, you kind of go back to where you started, really. The Konica, well, it's not Konica series by then. I think it was the HPDC series, but I remember that Gators Eyewear Falcon, Dick Johnson Racing, cool-looking car, fast car as well, which is even better for you. But how did the wheels roll to get you to DJR? Because part of that was that you would drive with Glenn Seaton, nice way that the circle came back around, with them in the endurance races. But what led to you and DJR?
So obviously Steve Chalker was the team manager back then, and I think Warren Luff had been driving for them in 2004. And that deal ended, and I think Warren was destined for the HPDC series, and Steve was like, "We want to beat Luffy," because I think it was a bad split potentially. So that was the reason they signed me up, was to compete against Luffy. I don't think it was for any other reason. But yeah, it was awesome to be able to go, all right, well, main game team, Dick Johnson Racing, cool. This is iconic team. And as you said, yeah, cool looking race car. And a sunglasses sponsor, and what better way to advertise sunglasses than on a bald dome with these shiny, bright aluminium sunnies.
And as I remember, Dino, that 05 year, I mean, you won the title, which is the best bit of it all, but I think you won, 5 of the 7 rounds, or you were pretty dominant, but there was one round I remember at Wakefield Park where you, how do we put it, had a large accident because someone was still on the grid that you weren't expecting to still be on the grid.
Yeah, so that was the first year they had this reverse grid idea. So won the first race, and then reverse grid comes along. I'd never thought in my life about a stall car on the grid because I'd never probably been that far back. And Luffy and I have taken off because we were both at the back for race 2, and I was behind Tony D'Alberto, and all I remember was D'Alberto zigging, and I should have zagged as well, but by the time Tony moved out of the way and then he moved and the heavens opened up to this stationary car in front of me, and unfortunately I had nowhere to go but right up the back of it.
Yeah, and that wiped you out for the rest of the day because it was the multi-race format and you kind of start where you finish or you combine points, and that was the only thing that could have probably derailed you winning that title that year.
Yeah, so just took the Alan Prost mentality from there on and collected as many points as we could. Up until probably Queensland Raceway, there was one race where I had a little incident with Warren Luff. Probably just got a little bit better of myself and tried to make a pass on him at turn 6 and had a spin, which I know that Roland Dane saw that, and that was probably something that hurt me going forward for the next year. Because I had an interview at Triple Eight later that year, but that one probably hurt my chances at some sort of a drive.
That was for a full-time seat for 06 we're talking about here.
Yep. Obviously that's that year for the remainder of it, finished all the races. Malala was kind to me again, won the championship there the first year I did it, and then coming through one of the reverse grid races, someone's oil line had come loose, and all I remember was watching Luffy and Macro fire down to the corner and not back off, and I backed out of it. So D'Alberto, Luffy and Macro all fired off in the oil, and I managed to get back on par with them and got some points back.
And you had your little teammate that everyone kind of forgot about, Grant Denyer, who I think you guys finished 1-2 that weekend as well. Yeah, so a solid weekend. I think he actually out-qualified me, to be honest, that weekend. We came out on top that weekend and sort of came out, I think, in front of the championship with one round to go. And we ended up with this kind of interesting scenario, didn't we, mate, where so you drive the Enduros with Dick Johnson Racing with Glenn Seaton, and then before we know it, you're driving for Garry Rogers all of a sudden out of the blue. How did that all come to be? Because he parts ways with Andrew Jones, I think just after Bathurst, was it not? And you get the call up to fill the chair.
Yeah, I got thrown in for Gold Coast and Tassie, I think, the 2 rounds of GRM. Again, I mean,
what was the link? What was the link there, mate? How did that all come to be? Because it sort of seemed a bit. I mean, obviously you were the form guy in the development series. Was that the thing that pretty much put you on his radar?
I guess so. I honestly can't remember how it came about. I think he just rang me and just said, "Yep, Andy's out. We want to put you in." And hopped into Gold Coast and had some fun. And Tassie, as you know, is pretty tough when you're a 10th off. So I remember Tassie just being a bash fest mid-pack.
It hasn't changed. It's pretty much the same these days, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So deal done. You win the development series down at Phillip Island to round out the year in 05. And then Garry Rogers Motorsport bring you on board for the next year full-time. So was there anything else going at that time? Did you have some other offers floating? You mentioned before that spin at Queensland, Roland's obviously looking at what he was going to do after Steve Ellery, who he was going to put alongside Craig Lowndes. So that was, I mean, surely one spin can't cost you a potential deal, can it? Really?
Yeah, I mean, I had a meeting at Triple Eight with Campbell and Roland, and then kept talking with them. I was supposed to catch up with them at the Gold Coast weekend, and then all of a sudden it all went quiet. And obviously, that's obviously when they put pen to paper with Jamie. And obviously, solid choice.
Yeah, it's worked okay.
Yeah, so that put the end to what I thought was probably a good opportunity. But we one door closes, another one opens, and did a deal with Garry.
Now, everyone who ends up working at Garry Rogers Motorsport, whether it's drivers, mechanics, engineers, people in the office, Gary's got this thing about that you have to have a nickname. And there's some weird and wacky and wonderful ones from over the years. How on earth, you just alluded to it, how did you escape not copying a really weird, strange nickname? Because that's generally what they are. How did you get out of this without this weird extra nickname?
Yeah, I don't know. What can you give me?
Dino. It's like Dino, there's not much more. I mean, what else can you do?
Everyone called me Dino anyway, or Dean, but I don't know. Maybe that was the writing on the wall from day one. If you didn't have a nickname, you weren't liked by him. Who knows?
I got a feeling that might not be the case. But maybe there's something in it. I don't know. So there's a couple of years for you at GRM, and there are some good things to reminisce about, because a lot of people, when they think of your supercar wins, they instantly go to the Gold Coast with David Reynolds for obvious reasons. It was a great result, and he was a dickhead on the podium and whacking the Armour-All bloke and throwing pot plants off the podium and all that stuff. But I think a lot of people forget that you did have a win with GRM in Perth in 06, and it came at the last corner, the last lap of a reverse grid race, and that the bloke who was going to win the race is the bloke that you mentioned earlier, who you were teammates, who you feel was throwing you under the bus a couple of years earlier at Briggs. So unpack that for me, because there's a lot of strands to that little storyline.
Yeah, obviously reverse grid race, and Perth is a pretty challenging track to pass on. It was Radicic, myself, and Stephen Richards, I reckon, was behind me.
Yep.
And we were just following the leader. Radicic was not as quick, but it was very hard to pass. I think about 5 laps from the end, just sort of through that fast kink, turn 3 there, near ran into the back of him. And I was like, oh, okay, clearly he's got some sort of mechanical problem that was intermittent. And, come on the straight on that last lap, back on the gas, and then all of a sudden his car got a lot closer to me on the way out of the corner, and I swerved and made contact. But, it's pretty hard to all of a sudden gain 1,000 horsepower. His problem revisited again just on that last lap, and I won crossing the line going, well, that probably didn't look ideal, but whatever. To the point where, I saw him before we went to the stewards, because the stewards were like, oh, we're going to call you up. And he goes, oh, yeah, had a problem. And then the prick in the stewards hearing didn't say anything about the problem he had. I had to explain and say, okay, explain to me how I can all of a sudden gain 1,000 horsepower and run into someone on the exit of a corner. That's how that one went.
And the result stood. You won the race. With it being a reverse grid one at the time, is a win a win, or does it have a little asterisk next to it, or how did you sort of process that? You when you won that Gold Coast one, that probably feels like a bit more of a win-win compared to that first one.
Yeah, I mean, the reverse grid race, it wasn't really a celebratory one, because it was those back then were winning the round or whatever. So, I won that little stint, but I wouldn't have called it a win.
Yeah, it probably wasn't a reason for a full aftermath party or anything like that. But so it's yourself and Lee Holdsworth in the GRM cars at that period, into the VEs the next year. And for one of us. Oh, well, yes, that was a good point. There was a delay in getting another car rolling. But where did that kind of relationship, that program, what was it missing? What did it need? What could you have done differently? because it was kind of there or thereabouts at that time.
Yeah, the VE I got stuck with the first one, which was terrible.
Why was it terrible? Was it the first one that they just didn't get right, or?
First one that GRM built, and obviously I got stuck with it. And as I alluded to earlier, the engineer that I had was only a race weekend engineer. He wasn't part of the workshop, so there was no real relationship there, I guess, through the week and to improve on things. But again, that's something I probably should have pushed for or worked on myself, but that was what I was dealt at that point in time. But before we went to the first 2-day test with that new car, when the car was still on the jig, I remember sitting in it and they, trying to position the seat because there was no homologated mounting and it was just whatever a team made back then. And, I hopped in with the steering wheel and the seat and the steering wheel was like really, really high. And I said, "Oh, can we lower it?" And they said, "Oh, no, the way we've designed the steering column, it's only one, there's not another knuckle. And that's as low as we can get it." So basically, just before the first test day, I got a hacksaw and cut the top of the steering wheel off so I could actually see out the front window, because that's how high it was. And the first test day, the way they had that steering rack set up or steering column, as the car got hot, the bushing in the steering column would jam up and you could literally turn the steering wheel and let it go and it would stay turned. So the first day was a little bit challenging, to the point where, the steering column came out that night and they got a die grinder to it to temporarily fix it. And then we started day 2 and man, I never had so many spins in my life. And, turning into turn 3, turning into the sweeper there at Winton, just kept ending up backwards. And the engineer was like, "Oh, we'll lower the roll center." I was like, "Well, yeah, I agree with that." Back in the day when you had the one through the window, you could just wind it down to stop it being nervous on entry, and came in and spun out. And I said, "It's worse." And he goes, "It can't be worse. Go more." So the mechanic winds the roll center lower. Anyway, we changed the setup on the car to the point where we've never run them before. And then it ended up finishing with me in the wall at turn 3 on that second test day and scratching our heads. So back at the workshop, turns out the sticker on the rear window for the roll center was on the wrong way.
So it was being wound completely the opposite direction to what you thought it was.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to get under the car and put a ruler under there and measure it. And that should have been, but that's the level the team was at, and the mechanics I had on the car, or the number one mechanic anyway, just to not double check things or whatever. So yeah, that was the first test day, or back to back, and sort of kind of went into the first round going, all right, well, what have we got? Anyway, first round was Adelaide, and Lee's hopped into the VZ that I had the year before and touching me up, and I just couldn't drive the VE. I was like struggling. I was like, is it me? And locking wheels where I shouldn't be locking wheels. And so the first 3 rounds, we got through the first 3 rounds, but I wasn't content. It was a challenge at best. And yeah, the third round in New Zealand had a massive crash on the last corner. So we'd just done a pit stop, and you're all pushing to the limit. Went into the last corner of the hairpin there on the brakes, and it was like the pedal went a bit long, but whatever, bit of pad knock off, that sort of thing. And then you got the fast kink before the turn on the straight, and the left front wheel, came most of the way off and jammed the steering, and I fired off into the wall, and got back into Melbourne, and Gary's like, "Oh, you should have known it was going to come loose, or you should have been able to tell, you're the senior driver." So the relationship was quite tense at that point. And at that point there, I spoke to the number 2 mechanic and found out that they were going from the workshop to the track, and with their corner weight scales, or the flat patch, they had a massive difference. Like, I'm talking 250 kilos across the front axle. And it didn't click in their heads even after round 3 that there was something wrong. And turns out that over Christmas they painted the floor in the workshop And when they put the car back in its work bay, or the flat patch in its work bay, they didn't re-center or re-level the flat patch that they had for the workshop. And they leveled, or they corner weighted the car incorrectly, to the point where even when they were doing the corner weights and the ride height adjustment on the dampers and putting lead in corners that they never put before, it still didn't twig that there might have been a problem. So for the first 3 rounds, I had this really, really poorly corner weighted race car, and a teammate that was knocking me off in the older shitbox. That was not a shitbox.
Yeah, and I guess too, this starts to undermine yourself, where you're starting to, for a time there, you're wondering, have I lost this? What was going on here? This doesn't make any form of sense. When you learn those bits, now you go, aha, there's a reason why, and that's what's been going on. But by that stage, has the relationship, their confidence in you gone, your confidence in them is gone, and you've still got, 3/4 of a season to play out?
Yeah, correct. That put me back a long way. And then that was the year when the points only went to 15th, I think.
Yeah, that's right. True.
Which is roughly where we were. And, man, to get that 1 point, there was some carnage. Like, everyone was just driving so hard. So you're always either caught up in something or you're not in the points. And yeah, I mean, obviously I started just probably not driving to the best of my ability, and just frustrated with the whole thing, and not actually using the processes that you'd learned along the way to calm yourself down and do the job, because in the back of your mind you're like, well, it's already a bad relationship going this far at this point of the season, and I've got to improve. And instead of thinking about the positives, you start thinking about the negatives, and the wheels sometimes fall off. And when it's yourself and you haven't got a mentor or anything, I guess you just sit there to stew in your own thoughts and not work through the problem.
Yeah, and I guess it makes it worse as the year goes on, because Lee goes and wins at Oran Park, which is it's his first breakthrough weekend in that wet weekend at Oran Park, and then at Bathurst, I think you ended up in the fence late in the race when you guys were running okay. So these other things happen, but by that stage, is the relationship beyond repair, and that you're thinking, well, I'm just not going to be here next year?
I mean, you try not to think that. I had another year on my contract, and it was like, I mean, I had been told by someone that I heard Garry's looking somewhere else, which then makes it hard again, because you sort of like think, crap, I got to do well. And when you're thinking in that mindset, things don't go well. So yeah, it was a tough sort of last half of the year, and to the detriment of my career. But I just wish Garry was honest. Ask him straight to his face and said, is there an issue going forward? No, not happy, but no problem. So, I hate people that lie. It's my career, and it had a massive effect on going forward. Tells me in January of the next year that the start of my third year that I don't have a deal, and he's got someone else. He goes, Michael's bringing 500. If you can get 250 together, I'll keep you. It's like, yeah, that's going to work now.
Yeah. So by that stage, January, deals are done. Everyone's got the merry-go-round's largely stopped for the silly season, and everyone's landed somewhere who needed to land somewhere, and it's too late to even go looking.
No, and he did it on purpose. It's just the kind of person he is.
Yeah, so it's a shame that 2 years there, you were out of the main game, you're back into the main game, now you're out of the main game. It's a fickle beast. Oh, now before we get into car racing carrying on here, you alluded earlier to your wife Erin, and you said that you met her at an event. Now, is it somewhere around this time or a bit earlier? Tell me I love to know the stories that end up with the happily ever afters. Where does Erin come onto the scene, and did you meet her at a racetrack? Like, come on, seriously?
I met people meet their partners at work all the time.
True, very true.
So when we tell the story, we just say we met at work.
Okay. There's got to be another story here, Dean, that you're not telling us.
Well, yeah, I met her at work. That's the story. I was working, she was working, and we met at work at a racetrack.
Which racetrack? Which racetrack?
Adelaide 2003.
There you go. That worked out well. So from a tough year came something very cool. So, you know.
So as I said, sliding doors, it's I got my wife and my family, so it's
Nothing to worry about there. It's worked out well. Right, let's rewind back and fast forward to the story. So the GRM thing goes away. It's January 2008. You're rideless. How does the door get you to, here we go back, to the development series again, with Howard Racing up on the Gold Coast and with FPR, who sign you up for enduros? How do the wheels get turning to get there?
Well, I had two options for enduros that year.
Do tell.
Roland rang me. It was between, he said, we'd love to have you. It'd probably be you and Adam Macro in the car. And obviously also had a Tickford option, or what was it, FPR option. FPR were quite strong, that you recall, at that point in time. And I was like, I've been with Triple Eight. Ford are doing pretty well. Macro. We just decided to do the FPR option. Signed a deal with them. And then it turned out that a guy I'd been working with in business, running a stunt driving experience together, who kept his cards close to his chest, said nothing to me, and turns out we're fucking pairing in a car together.
So this is Luke Youlden. So you both end up driving together, having worked together, but not told one another about what you're doing.
Well, you can't. It's motorsport.
It's race. It's business. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
It's selfish, and it's there's 100 guys trying to get into 20 seats. So, we ended up doing a deal with Tickford or FPR, and what did I serve with them? 11 years.
I was going to say it was a very long and fruitful relationship. I mean, you don't last that long as an endurance co-driver at one team. I mean, it's right up there for one of the longest stints that any one driver's had with any one team. I think you went right through their multiple name changes. You were there for that long, and you've probably got a long list of race suits and shirts and different colours. I think you were in every colour at one stage over the journey there too.
Yeah, Trading Post and FPR and Bottle-O, and I even had a Wendy suit for one, if you remember.
Yes, I was going to get to that.
So yeah, many suits, and many different height drivers, just none as short as me.
I was going to ask. I do ask a lot of guys on this pod, and the sleuth thing. We love knowing about the old cars and the history and the memorabilia and the heritage of the sport. I find that drivers tend to be at either end of the spectrum. They're either complete hoarders who are going to end up on one of those hoarders shows one day, or they're at the opposite end where they've just kept nothing. Where do you fall in that spectrum of... I mean, Jason Bright's a shocker. He's kept every suit, every shirt, everything I think he's ever had. Are you got a couple of things, a lot of things, no things? What's your take on where you are in memorabilia stuff?
I'm not a hoarder. Like my the Konica Series, that car is with a mate of mine in Sydney, or not a mate, but we've now known quite well. So the wreaths, all the wreaths that we got that year, the bottles, because my old man, he's a hoarder, he kept everything, and the trophy and all that there with the car.
Cool. Love it. That's ace.
The special ones, the second at Bathurst with Dave and the surfboards, they're at home, but they're not prominent. They're there. A couple of suits, when the ones that have a bit of history to them, but I don't have a helmet case display. I don't have mountains of memorabilia hanging up on the wall and things like that. So,
we're not going to see you on Hoarders in 2039 or something like that. I think you're pretty safe to not be a contender for getting a gig on that show. So at this point, I mean, we know the history you end up, and we'll talk about some of the instances and some of the great stuff that happened with FPR/ProDrive/Tickford, because they had a couple of changes along that way. But
Nash Racing.
And Rod Nash Racing, of course, he was the Bottle-O part before he was an owner of the team. But was there anywhere in that whole journey that there was a chance to get back into the main game, or was it a case of the moment had passed, enduros were your thing. You did some other racing to fill the gaps in between, and you had business and the stunt driving stuff, for example. Was there any other opportunity? Did the phone ring? Was there a chance to get back in the door somewhere?
There was one more push. So when PD finished up in the Bodlo car, it was. I think it was. I thought I was nearly all the way there, and then enter Dave Reynolds. Obviously, Matthew Nielsen was part of the Tickford team or whatever it was called at that point, and he pushed his barrow a fair bit. But I know Rod was obviously quite keen on me, and Bodlo were very happy with me and things like that. But enter Davey.
Enter Davey, indeed. That's enter David. That's how it. But I think the other thing was there that was at one stage going to be Lee Holdsworth was looking to end up and might have just about been in that drive at some point, but that didn't play out, and he went to Stone Brothers from memory. But anyway, you blokes all end up sort of in and around the honey pot because that's just the nature of this whole business and this whole game. But tell me about the stunt driving school, because I remember that for a time you and Luke were doing that. I mean, driving things on two wheels and all sorts of stuff. How did that all come to be?
When I was living in Melbourne, we just used to, as an enduro driver, you kind of get as much other work as you can. And we were working for a guy in Melbourne who had this stunt driving experience. He used to run it part-time in Sydney. And, we need something of our own, and, rather than just being contractors everywhere. And so we kind of bought the Sydney division off him and evolved it a little bit and took customers' feedback on board and had our fun with it. We ran that for a period of time. We had split surface skids, motorcarnas, jump ramps, two-wheeling, handbrake turns, all that sort of stuff. It was good just to put I wouldn't call our skills, but just our name to something and have people come through because of our name. And it was just our little side business, I guess. And our partners sort of did the admin. I mean, my wife did most of the bookings and all that sort of stuff, and Lukey and I were the brawn, and
the brawn, you two, brawn. That's dangerous. Dangerous combination. Dangerous. Let me step through a bit of that FPR era, because there's some great stuff to look on. 2012 Bathurst, as I think you might have alluded to earlier. Dave's in the car at the end, second by the narrowest of margins to Jamie Whincup, who is literally just about out of juice. I don't think he gets another lap out of that Vodafone car. What's the feeling for you there? Because I'm so intrigued by this with people at Bathurst. Is it, wow, what an amazing result, I finally got to the podium, it's a jubilation and a joy, or is it something that gnaws at your guts that goes, I've just missed the biggest and best thing in what I do by such a small margin, and I might not get back here close enough to have another shot at this? I'm so intrigued as to which side of the fence you fall on, because both are totally understandable and justifiable emotions and feelings.
I guess for me at that point, it was a bit of relief because it was the first time I'd been on the podium after how many years?
Quite a few, 13 I think it was.
Yeah, I got a love-hate relationship with that place. So yes, it was like relief that finally I've got some sort of result out of that joint. But also it's like, if we played strategy differently, or why did it have to be the closest non-form finish in history? I would have rather not. And they say, there's always next year. It's like, but it's not always that. It's not that easy. Each year was getting more and more competitive as it progressed. But anyway, it was nonetheless. I got to stand on the podium and spray some champagne. But you always still think, what I could have done differently, or could I've come in the pits a bit faster, or things like that. But second still. First of the losers, and the person that's like, did you finish second? I only ever remember the winner.
Well, Dave does his best when he doesn't win to make it memorable, because that's the year I think he lobbed the microphone off the podium and copped an invoice from Channel 7. So at least your trip to the podium that weekend didn't cost you like it did for him, because I think he had to pay up for that after that. But 2013 Car of the Future is in play, and you and Dave go back to, because previously the Gold Coast, remember, mate, had been the enduro for the international drivers to co-drive, and by 13,
it's a one-car team.
Correct. So it was always it was Jacques Villeneuve, it was Christian Klein, whereas the two-car teams could have one international in the early stages, and then they made it so as everyone had to have one. But point being, by the time we get to 13, that's not an option anymore. That's not a format. So you're in play for the Gold Coast with Dave, and you guys get that win at the Gold Coast 600. What do you remember? I mean, everyone, I reckon, that thinks about Dave on the podium and the pot plants and the Armour All bloke and all the fun that went on afterwards. But what's the standout memory and moment for you of that day? Because it's a really special one that you should be so proud of, because it's a major endurance event. It's a high-profile event with a lot of history, and you topped it. You got to the top step.
Yeah, I mean, it was good after the disappointment of Bathurst that year, because that's, like, everyone has a sad story about Bathurst, but that's probably the one that Dave and I, that one really hurt, because we were leading whatever point it was in the race, and we were a reasonable gap ahead of everyone else on pure pace. And a safety car got called and it beat Dave to the line on pit exit. Dave was actually at pit entry when safety car got called, so he couldn't box. Therefore, everyone else pitted after him and then came out with a full tank of juice. And then from that point on, we couldn't recover and get back through the field. So I think that one, if you talk to the engineering staff we had that year, it was the one that hurt. But yes, nonetheless, come to Gold Coast. I love street circuits, and Dave does too. He seems to excel at Gold Coast no matter what he's in. Something with three wheels, but to finally stand on that top step, and it was a good fun race. Obviously JC Courtney had a bit of an issue in the race, which sort of handed one to us. But up until that point, fighting with Murphy and everything else that weekend was good. The car was hooked up, and other than the point of Dave grabbing the Armour All hammer, was a great weekend.
It got a little bit loose and out of control after that. By this stage, mate, are you living in Adelaide? I'm interested in. You've been there for a long time now, but what led you to South Australia? You're from Sydney originally. You're in Melbourne for a while with being based down here with GRM. Why Adelaide? It's become a happy home for you now. Was it around that time that you were heading over there?
2000, midway through 2008, we moved to Adelaide.
Yeah, right. So it's a long time earlier.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had one child and we were planning on having another. And Erin really didn't know anyone in Melbourne. I was travelling a lot just to make ends meet with contractor work, with manufacturers and stuff. So the decision was like, we'll either move to Sydney near my family or Adelaide near hers. And my time in Adelaide prior to that, I really enjoyed the lifestyle, the relaxed nature and the river life and all that sort of stuff. So, that was behind the joint decision we made. We moved to Adelaide mid-2008 and Enter the Bend sort of just cemented me here in the end. But I wouldn't leave this place. It's awesome. At the end of the day, we don't have to hop on a plane to go and visit family and go on holidays. But it's in my eyes probably one of the best places to live, other than the cold, moist winters. Every other part of it's really good.
It's got to have a downside to get all the upsides. You can't have all good, mate. You can't have all good. In that era with you and Dave, Bottolo, Rod Nash, Tickford ProDrive, I think it was FPR till that point. But the one that sticks in my memory bank is Bathurst in 14. Dave's in the car. It stops on Mountain Straight. It won't refire. And like that's it, you're done. And the vision of you in the pits. I mean that I think often supercar drivers and motorsport athletes in this country get unfairly tarred with this brush of they're all boring, they're all robots. Like I think people actually genuinely forget how much that race means to the people in it, the people watching it. it's the bit where it's the day where everyone wants to be at their best and achieve the most. And I remember that vision of you absolutely crushed. Was that a better chance to win than in 12? Because you guys were sort of there or thereabouts again on that day. And with the weirdness that happened later on, Chaz wins, Jamie runs out of juice, Frosty gets bumped by Lowndes. I mean, there was just Van Gisbergen's car won't restart. It's woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't, but I can't help but feel that emotion was completely justified given what could have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from contrast to the year before. So the year before, I think we started on pole.
That was the next year. That was 15.
That
was
15.
15.
Sorry. Yeah, so 13, obviously we had we got screwed over by the safety car. So then 14, Davey crashed in quali, so they had to rebuild the car. We had the next practice session, like practice 6 or whatever it is. We had an issue with the fuel tank that they put in, so we got no running. We did warm up, and we started last in the race, obviously, because he crashed in quali. I think Whincup was also at the back that year.
Yeah, true.
So to work our way from back of the grid, so I got to start, wobbling around, cruising along, worked our way up to, the front, and everything was going good. You got guys changing drive shafts and stuff on the grid. It's like I wish we knew about the alternator failing at that point, because we could have put an alternator on and pressed on. But the emotion of that place when you've had so many hard runs along the way, and you're running up the front because you earned to be there and you worked your way there, to just have something pulled away from you. I mean, Glenn Seaton's probably one person that you could have a good conversation with this about 9 laps from the end, and his engine stopped. But it's just, the emotions, I still remember that day crushing you. And because as an enduro driver, you're there once, you get to race twice a year. You do 2 races a year, or 3, depending when it was. And you're like, well, I'm not coming back for another 12 months or 11 months is the next time I'm going to race, and it's Bathurst, and I don't know how many more I've got in me or how much longer I'm going to be here for. So, to get pulled out of it like that, and you're like, through no fault of your own, it's crushing.
And it totally was. I mean, and I said it before, but I mean, we're so used to V8 drivers, motorsport athletes being just so professional in when it goes wrong, and fronting up and doing the interviews and copping it on the chin so much that the emotion coming through is actually a bit of a rarity. So I love it. I think it's, I mean, obviously I didn't love it for you on the day as to what was happening to you, but that there's, quite often that emotion's muted is what I guess I'm trying to say. So whenever it's trying to, you can try to articulate and talk about it as much as you like about how much winning Bathurst means or how much the mountain means. You play that 5-second tape or ones like it, and it just totally sums it up to people, and they'll instantly understand what that means without any words really being added. In that period, mate, of that such a long period, so we go from 2008 for you right through, I think, to 2018 with the one team, so 11-year run. Are you just year by year there, and they go, you want to go, and you go, yeah, all right? Is that sort of how it worked for that whole period, or were you able to just do slabs of, here, let's do a couple of years in review?
Yeah, it was multi-year deals most of the time, depending when there was the Rod Nash era. I can't remember the specifics because obviously it chopped and changed a little bit. But yeah, they were multi-year deals until, towards the last year that I did with them, it was like a little bit quiet. Steve Owen and I were like, you heard anything? He goes, no. You? I was like, no. So yeah, it's kind of like no information is not good news. And then you ask a few of the people in the teams, like, no, we're still, all the data was good and everything else, and you're like, yeah, okay, not confident, but yeah, at some point it's going to come to an end. You can only do your best up until that point, and it's not life or death.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And I mean, there's that period with Dave, and then with Frosty, obviously, for the last couple of years there as well. But the bit that we did touch on this a little bit earlier, but everyone kind of forgets, I think, that there was an Erebus cameo to drive the Mercedes, which is that car's really thought of fondly by a lot of our followers and fans of the sport. But was it, I think, Phillip Island? It was kind of a fill-in gig after Ash Walsh had departed the team, and you get a call-up. But I think you'd driven for them, hadn't you, at the 12-hour that year in one of their SLS Mercs, so you kind of already had a little bit of a connection there.
Yeah, so, that was such an all good race meeting because Ash Walsh was actually still at the track and came to all the signings and was on the grid at the start of the race standing next to the car. And it's like, but I didn't get involved in the political side of things. But yeah, I'd already obviously driven, partnered with Jack LeBrock and Richard Muscat in the Bathurst 12-hour in the SLS. I guess they were filtering through a few drivers at the end of that year. I think Alex Davidson drove, I drove. I'm not sure who else drove, but it's just a one-off thing. But as a driver at that point in time, you're like, cool, whatever, I'll hop in the driver's seat.
Phone rings, need a driver, I'm a driver.
Yeah.
Why not? It's a pretty simple scenario, and I guess it's another car that you add to the list that you got to drive.
Yeah.
So,
and especially when, obviously things have not gone well with their current driver, so you're like, well, there's potentially going to be a seat next year. I guess that's your audition kind of thing.
Can't hurt. You got to put your hand up and see what can happen. I got to point out too that some of the background noise, you are in a workshop, there's other workshops around you, so if anyone's got a little bit of worry with the audio, it's just kind of how it is, but that's what happens when you're in and around workshops and stuff. It's not too bad, mate. We'll be able to get by, because at the end of the day, the chat is the star and you're the star of this, so this will be you've actually while we're talking, you've actually made a little bit of a move. Well bowled. Mate, the Tickford era finishes at the end of 18, so an awesome run. But I think a lot of people forget you went and drove for a year with Macaulay Jones in the Cool Drive car at BJR as well. So I guess Tickford, that was just a case of, hey mate, it's been a great run, but we're going to go in a different direction. It's got to look back on that as a great run, because there's not many people who can say they drove for one team as a co-driver for 11 years. It's pretty awesome.
Being with Tickford for 11 years, to have that stability as a co-driver obviously helps, because you don't get a lot of time in the car. When Davey left the team, he did try and get me across to Erebus, and at that point I was like, do I like change? Do I want to go somewhere else? And just decided to stay with Tickford. Stay in a Bottle car. I kind of like the colours and things like that. But at that point, it's like, we'll ride this out for as long as I can, and see what happens, and just keep building. Frosty coming across, it was like, cool. Like, I didn't actually know who I was going to pair with. I knew that I was going to still be in the team for enduros going forward, but it wasn't just necessarily set in stone. As to who I would pair with. Rode out the next couple of years with Frosty. We had not really much success, to the point where, I think we had a disc rotor explode at Bathurst. I think 5 laps from the end, he ended up in the wall at Forest Elbow. And then one of the other years, we just made up the numbers. And if you've got the time, look up my stats on my Bathurst 1000 finishes, because it is woeful.
I can tell you what they are. 21.
My finishing rate is less than 50%.
Yeah, it's 21 starts for 10 finishes with 6 top 10s and a podium. Terrible. It is what it is.
Place hates me.
Well, it's not an easy place to get success at. It's sort of, that underlines how hard it is. And as you said before, there's that whole, people say, next year, you've got next year. Well, sometimes tomorrow never comes, and you blink and you miss it, and you've done 20 odd, and it doesn't come back to you. That's just kind of how it is.
Did Percat, correct me if I'm wrong, Percat won his first year?
Correct. Yeah.
Which rubs salt into the wound even more.
Yeah. It's
not taking anything away from him, but
no. It's a cruel mistress, the mountain. Cruel place. When it's cruel, it's cruel. So there's that 2019 year with Macaulay, and then obviously COVID early 2020 just stops everything in its tracks. And that turns out to be the last time that you raced a supercar. So did you have a deal, or were you looking to go again in 20 and COVID stuffed it, or is it just that's coincidental timing as to where that sort of stopped the supercar chapter for you?
I did get asked that year, but it was at a point where I'd made a decision of it's not worth it. Like going another year, like it was, financially, it was like, I'm not going to just sign up to go and do it again for my own ego and be away from my family for a certain period of time for the year without actually, benefiting from it. So that was where that decision came to sort of go, well, going forward, unless it's 888 on the phone, and you're going to go, well, apples for apples. It's like, I'm happy to give someone else a shot. Some of the older guys could probably go, look, it's not the end of the world to sit back and maybe move into another role or things like that. But unfortunately, we're all competitors. But yes, I made. It wasn't a tough decision. It was just like it was a business decision. It was a life decision. My eldest is 17 and my youngest is nearly 15. So time goes so fast.
Yeah, it does. It's amazing how it does. But I mean, you kept plenty busy with a different Bathurst, the 12-hour. You did plenty of those in GT cars with the Trofeo guys there for many years. I think you did about 4 or 5 back-to-back as well. So you've still got your Bathurst fix right through that time while you were still doing the supercar thing. And I mean, you're still busy with your business now, and you're still driving cars. You're still around motorsport. You're still around motorsport people. I mean, your workshop's at a racetrack every day, mate. So you're not exactly lost to the sport, even though we don't see you as much these days.
Yeah, and I moved into a role of DSO for the Radical Championship last year. So on the other side of the fence now, and I'm the guy everyone either loves or hates, depending on which side of the decision they're on. But that's the role. It's a thankless role. I don't envy Beardo, but it is what it is. It's another part of the sport and the progression of what you've done as a past life.
It's a great way for you to be able to, I guess, also impart some of your knowledge. And a lot of people think that the driving standards role is you're against the drivers, you're trying to penalise them, you're trying to pick them up on everything that they do wrong. But I know that Beardo's got this approach, and no doubt you've got that approach, that you're actually there to help them. I mean, you want them to be better so they're not being dragged up in front of the stewards to answer things and have to deal with all that stuff. If you can help get them on the right path or show them what they could have done, should have done, it's more an instructory and positive role than, I guess, just a bloke who just sits there and tells people off for doing bad stuff.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, even the Radical Championship has a very, very big mix of people and different skill levels. So I can tell you now, the officials don't want to give out penalties, but the rules are there, and if they are breached, as a driving standards advisor, you're not the one who gives out the penalties. We're only advising. So, but yeah, we never like giving penalties out, and if we can educate the drivers when they've done something wrong, that's what we do in our role.
Yeah, and it means that you don't have to have them come to you for stuff in the future if they're on the straight and narrow from the beginning. So that's always a handy way. Mate, we talked about your Bathurst numbers. I think with guys like yourself, it's important that we step through a couple of these things because just doing one round of the Supercars Championship is a feat. You did 96 rounds, 166 races in the main game, both as a co-driver and as a full-timer. In the development series, whether it was Konica V8 lights, HPDC, Fujitsu, it's sort of the artist formerly known as. You did 19 rounds, you won 9 of them, you did 50 races, and you won 21 of them. That's a hell of a strike rate in the development category that you should be really, really, really proud of in a couple of different eras with different teams in different cars. So you should look back on that pretty fondly. Just to round it out, mate, there's been a lot of highs and lows, which is the story of everyone's careers. But what are you proudest of? And maybe this is something for young drivers to take away from this. What are you the proudest of? Whether it might be an actual result or a particular day, or in general how you approach your career. What are you proudest of the way that this has all panned out for you so far?
Proudest of. It's a tough one. I mean, results are results. It's such a big team effort, the sport. As a driver, it's an individual thing. Proudest of, I've always been a nice guy, I guess. I haven't turned into someone that won't stop for a fan or things like that. I think that's lost a little bit these days. But yeah, just being that all-round character, and it was always fun, and someone to be around in a team environment that you never let the lows get you down too much, but I guess was always on the bright side of things when you could be.
It's a great way to look at it, mate, and there's been plenty of bright sides along the way. Thanks for re-stepping some of this. It's been great. I mean, I've been lucky enough to pretty much see your career right through from that period of the Maserati and the Subaru and the Super Tourers and all through the V8s. Mate, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate driving back down memory lane with you, and no doubt you got plenty more race cars to prep and run and drive in the future and advisory. I mean, we talked, one of the common themes that came out to me in this whole chat was just not quite having at the critical times that advisor, that mentor, that guiding hand in the corner, and maybe you can be that for someone moving forward who's coming up through the ranks, whether it's in South Australia or it's through the driving standards work that you're doing. But there's plenty of Dean Canto to be in motor racing moving forward, even if you're not driving regularly. We're not seeing you on our TV screens.
Yeah, and look, it's my eldest son. He's heavily into the sim racing. To the point where I can't beat him. And I would say he's probably got more natural ability than me. When it comes to being on track, he's been in my little Toyota 86 and he's only half a second off me around the bend. That's probably another proud moment, but it's also a scary moment because I don't know what to do going forward. He's never done go-karts or anything like that, but it's I love motorsport. I just don't know about the landscape of where it is these days. It's not like it used to be. I mean, it is where it is, and we can't do anything about it. But I feel that some guys that necessarily have the raw talent aren't all there due to whatever budgets and things like that. But as you touched on, I think mentors for anyone. Push your parents away as much as they support you financially or whatever. Push your parents away. Latch onto a good mentor if you can, if you've got that available to you, and see where you end up.
Mate, I'm always keen that people, particularly young drivers or younger people in the sport, get something out of our podcast, and it's not just two slightly older blokes looking back at how great it all used to be and how fast they used to be and all that sort of stuff. So, mate, thank you so much for the insight. Really appreciate it. All the best with everything that's going on at Edge. You got plenty of cars to prep and run, and no doubt we'll see your bright, shiny face at a racetrack sometime soon. And who knows, there might be a younger Canto in a little Toyota somewhere, but surely, mate, you've got to get the golf clubs, a cricket bat, a tennis racket, something. Or it might be a bit too late now, 17, 15... Those kids are too old, mate. You didn't get in early enough to stop them from this motor racing thing. I'm building up a little improved production car that he's just going to have some fun with at the bend in some state racing. But we'll see where it eventuates. But I don't want to be one of these Johnsons or Barguanas or Ambroses. No. Just make it fun and don't get dragged into having to live this career all over again, because once is enough, surely.
Yeah.
Dino, thank you, mate. Thoroughly appreciate it. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
It's been quite the career, hasn't it? Plenty of stuff to chat about with Dean. Lots of highs, lots of lows. Such is the stuff of careers in motorsport. A big thank you to Dino for the time. I'm sure there's a few topics, cars, races, and stories that we skipped over, but that's kind of how this stuff rolls. And I kind of don't mind it that we leave some stuff out, because that gives us an excuse to go back and get him back on the pod somewhere down the line in upcoming weeks, months and years. But if you've got a suggestion of a guest that you'd like to hear, or maybe one that we've had before that you'd like to go back to and have another crack at and ask them some more stuff, we'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us on all the socials, Facebook, Insta, X. That's where you find us. Or there's a contact form on our website as well. So we love to hear from our fans and our followers. We like to know, who would you like us to talk to? What are the big questions? What are the topics that matter? what would you like to hear more of on the pod? We love a bit of feedback. It's always good. And, bad feedback's okay, but we do like good feedback more. But we'll cop whatever feedback that we can get. At the end of the day, if you're giving feedback, it means that you care. Whether you like it or you don't like it, if you care enough to get in touch, that's a good thing. Hey, I'm over now. Thanks again for tuning in. Thoroughly appreciate it. A big thank you to Dean Canto once more. A big thank you to you for tuning in. Hang on. You. Yeah, the one listening right now. You. I'm talking to you, wherever you are right now. If you're driving your car or if you're walking the dog, whatever you're doing, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for spending some time. We thoroughly appreciate it. Enjoy your week, and we'll be back with another episode next week. The V8 Sleuth Podcast for Autobarn.